Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for High Velocity Radio.
Welcome to Coach the Coach, helping business coaches deliver more impact in less time. Brought to you by the Business Radio X Studio Partner Program. If you're a business coach and want to help more people make more money and own your backyard, go to mybrxstudio.com. Lee, this is going to be a fantastic segment. Please join me in welcoming to the broadcast writer, author, and HR professional with Leadership and More, Mr. Anthony Eaton. How are you, man?
I'm great. How are you?
We are doing well. Anthony, before we get too far into things, can you share a little bit about your practice, Leadership and More? How are you serving folks?
Well, it's really not a practice. It's actually my website. As I have developed through my human resource career, leadership has taken on more and more of a spotlight. As part of that, wanted to share my message, my experience, thoughts with other people. So I developed a website called Leadership and More, and I frequently do leadership interviews with a wide range of people. I write articles, do book reviews, just another way to help people be the best leader they can be.
Now, but your work every day is on the website creating content, or are you actually working with companies and individuals to help them be better leaders?
So I do both. I am still a practicing HR professional, and so that is basically my day job, if you will. But I am always open and available to working both with other companies and individuals with that coaching, developing. Sometimes people just need that sounding board and that different perspective when it comes to coaching and development.
So now, can you share a little bit about your leadership philosophy?
Well, I believe, and it's maybe said a lot, but I really do believe in servant leadership. I think a lot of what we see lacking in the business world, corporate world that I have been a part of, is leaders who are really involved and engaged with creating more leaders. You do that by serving the people that you're working with.
Now, do you believe that leaders are born or leaders made?
I think there is with some individuals, a natural affinity to take on the leadership role. But I believe everybody is a leader in some form or fashion, whether you've got that official leadership title in a corporation or, civically, or you're a leader in your community. And I say that because we all influence people, and we all know that leadership can be good or bad. So it's just really a matter of, being cognizant of what kind of influence am I having on people? What kind of leader am I? Because I'm setting an example with everything that I do.
Have you seen any instances where a company, maybe their culture, is thriving with a person in leadership that isn't doing a great job? Like, is it possible for an organization to thrive if there isn't really a good leader at the helm?
Well, certainly I think that we've seen examples of financial thriving in organizations. I've worked for a couple myself that had less than stellar leadership. And obviously leadership is kind of, what is your perception and perspective on it? And I say not good, because I think while they may have been thriving financially, I always question how much better could they have been doing if they had really positive, strong leadership. So a lot of times we think of success of a company just in those dollars and cents, what it means to the stockholders, not necessarily what it means to the individuals who make up that organization.
Now, are you seeing a push of more kind of, I've heard the term conscious capitalism, or like you mentioned, servant leadership, where organizations are taking a more holistic view of all the stakeholders, not just the shareholders? Are you seeing that happening at all?
I do see that. I connect with a lot of individuals who share the same philosophy. Obviously, I think naturally we attract what we are, and so I see where there are companies, typically younger, newer companies, who understand that a company and a business is just a name. What makes that is really the people behind that name and the people behind that product, and they can make or break that organization.
And in your work, have you had any instances where you've been able to maybe work with a leader and help them maybe get to the next level, or just kind of thrive and make a bigger impact?
Absolutely. There have been a number of times where I have worked within an organization supporting a leader who is wanting that. That's the first and most important thing, I think, is you've got to be conscious of what you want. And if you want to be a better leader, you're going to seek that out. Typically, it ends up being, in terms of that coach, that go-to person that they can bounce ideas off. They can, have that back and forth conversation where they know they're going to get honest, candid feedback that is designed in a way to really help them see a different perspective.
So in the instances you've been able to make an impact, can you share, don't name any names, but share like what was the challenge and then how you were able to kind of help them overcome it and make the impact?
Not long ago, in fact, it was the person wasn't in a traditional leadership role, but they really were questioning their skills and abilities. Do I have the ability to move into that role? And it was really about helping them see the breadth and depth of their strengths and how those related to leadership. They were great at listening. They were great at giving feedback. They were, it's cliche, but they were really a team player. They were involved. They cared about people. All those really positive qualities that are needed in leadership. But from their own perspective, which we often struggle with ourselves, they couldn't make the connection. So it was really helping them make the connection. And they've gone on to, take another role in another organization that puts them on that path.
By kind of making them aware of all the data points of things that they were doing that are successful and that are impactful, that they were maybe taking for granted. Was that some of it?
Absolutely. Yes. And also getting them to see, by some shared experiences that, there are, what are the pitfalls? So perhaps maybe look at what this leader is doing over here and the effect that is happening as a result of that. But if you were to do this, you could get a totally different result.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your backstory. How did you kind of get into this role? Were you always coaching in some manner or leading in some manner throughout your career?
I really wasn't. My career actually found me in human resources, and I started out from the very bottom. Had never thought of working in this field and profession. As my career progressed and I gained greater exposure to more of your mid-level, high-level leaders and executives, I began to really kind of focus in and observe what made these leaders good or bad. What were the positive or negative things? It helped me, because I was introspective, to be able to say, oh, that makes sense. That's the kind of person I want to be, or that's who I don't want to be. And it has just evolved. It's been kind of a natural evolution over time where I knew that I could take my knowledge and my skill, my working in human resources, my ability to communicate well with people, and transfer that.
Now, what's the most rewarding part of the work for you?
The most rewarding part of the work is seeing somebody when that light bulb moment happens and you're describing something, or sometimes it's even demonstrating it. Do a lot of, with leaders, what does it look and sound like? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so when they get it, you can literally see it in their face and in their eyes. And to me, that's so rewarding. There's also been those times where somebody has come back, after time has passed and said, what you told me or the conversation that we had really helped me out in this situation. And that's very rewarding to me.
Now, do you do most of your work virtually or in person?
Well, in my day job as an HR professional, I do both. So a lot of what I do is coaching, supervisors and leaders, and I will do that in person, face to face, or sometimes it will be they will call me, they'll have questions, they'll need something. And I just guide them. I try to dig into what is it that's going on. Oftentimes with leaders, the struggles that they have are with the people that they're leading. And so it's, how do I handle this situation? Or how do I have that conversation with this person without damaging what our relationship is now? Again, I find that it's not that leaders typically don't want to do it, or they don't want to do it right. They just don't know how.
Now, when you're working with these, are they primarily executives, or they could be anybody within the organization?
They could really be anybody within the organization. I've worked with frontline employees who are struggling. A lot of times it's that relationship, because relationships are the foundation of everything. And so, how do I communicate with my manager? I'm not getting what I need. And really trying to get them also to step out of their own experience and see things from a different perspective. When we don't know the reasons behind something, hasn't been explained to us, we make that story up in our head. And It's usually not a very good story.
It's not accurate. It's
not accurate. It's never accurate. That's for sure.
Now, how have you seen kind of leadership training and leadership coaching evolve over the years?
It's interesting because when I started my career, I'm not going to say how many years ago because I don't want to date myself. It seemed that coaches were something you only heard about for executives. What I have found is oftentimes when somebody at an executive level needs a coach, it's really, really hard for that person to change what has been ingrained for years and years and years. I find the best coaching and development happens early in a career when somebody is trying to figure out where they want to be. Do they want to be in a management role? Sometimes people think, I want to be in a management role. They get into it. They don't really know what management and leadership is because those are two different things. And then they discover, hey, this isn't for me. So I think the most effective coaching that is evolving is with the individual earlier in their career.
And this kind of leadership training and coaching is very impactful because it goes beyond the walls of their office, right? This is stuff they can bring into their community, bring into their home, bring into their parenting.
Absolutely. Everything that we do, and because the lines today are so blurred, everything we do is transferable. So the leadership skills that I have in my 9-to-5 job in the corporate environment, I can use those, with my church group or with my youth group that I'm leading. I can use it within my own family because, again, we're influencing all the time.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Coach the Coach, helping business coaches deliver more impact in less time. Featuring our guest today, writer, author, HR professional with leadership and more, Mr. Anthony Eaton. Coach the Coach is brought to you by the Business Radio X Studio Partner Program. If you're a business coach and want to help more people make more money and own your backyard, go to mybrxstudio.com. Lee, it is time for the undoubtedly best part of the program, and you know why.
The listeners love it. I get so much feedback from this.
I love it because it's about me, and it genuinely helps me. Plus, I don't mind talking about me from time to time. Anthony, I mentioned to you before we went on the air that I do have a coaching role here at Business Radio X. It is confined to being an internal coach to studio partners across the network. But as I was listening to you and Lee talk, the line between coach and leader was kind of getting blurred for me a little bit, and it made me think. You know, in some respects, to some studio partners in the network, I wonder if I'm regarded and expected to behave as a leader, and in other cases, am I regarded and expected to behave as a coach? And if so, where is that line drawn, and what discipline should I be exercising? So any ideas, observations, counsel you might have on that topic of leader versus coach, particularly for someone with an internal set of responsibilities like I have?
Well, I think that leaders are coaches, or they should be. They're not all. I think we all know that. I think there's a clear distinction, though, between being a coach and, say, a counselor. Coaching is not about solving somebody's problems or, passing judgment, if you will, or disciplining them. That, to me, is not coaching. Coaching it should be something that is positive. And so I think you have to understand the difference in the roles. And a leader can wear more than one of those hats, obviously, because they have a multitude of responsibilities. But sometimes I think, we do things under the guise of, I'm coaching that person, but no, I'm not really coaching them. I'm counseling them. Coaching to me also is, while we might share our experience, it's not, to me, it shouldn't be sharing my opinion, because my opinion doesn't matter. And my opinion doesn't necessarily help you.
Thank you for that. That helps me. I can tell you that. I'll continue to try to keep that in mind.
Now, Anthony, are there any leaders or authors that you read or keep up with? Are there people that are kind of role models for you?
Well, there are. I'm always on the lookout for things that people have written. I'm an avid reader. And it may be, oftentimes it's just one book that they may have written comes to mind. There is an individual that I interviewed. She wrote a book, and it was about being a mother and then going back into the workplace. And the book was Work, Pump, Repeat. And as a man, it intrigued me because I heard her speak about her book and her experience struggling when she went back into the workforce with how not only men viewed her as being a working mother, but also how her female counterparts, treated her. So I'm always looking for things where, I'm exposed to something new. Currently, I picked up Michelle Obama's book, regardless of what people's politics are. I found it intriguing because it's all about her journey. And that's a lot of what I focus on when I do interviews for my website is what was somebody's journey, or what is somebody's journey? What's their experience with leadership? What has helped forge them, create them? Why are they the kind of leader that they are? I think that's where we learn the best is by, being exposed to a lot of different ideas and concepts.
Now, when you're working with the people that you work with, are they, and you're working with their career plan, do most people have a plan, or they're just kind of kind of just going along for the ride, and wherever the opportunity pops up, they decide yay or nay, then I'll pursue it or I won't?
It's interesting because I have found this kind of goes to when people go to college and they pick a field or a major. I've known so many people who spent, their 4 years going to college. They study to become a lawyer, and they go into the profession and they hate it, and then they find something different. So I find very few people who, where they're at is where they kind of set out to be. And I'm sure there are those people out there. It just hasn't been my experience. Typically, they're always trying to, I don't like to use the word figure it out because it seems like, they're floundering. I mean, they have some idea, but they understand the fluidity of career. And that's been my own experience. I never set out to work in human resources. I never said, I have to be this, and then I have to be that, and I have to have a corner office, and et cetera, et cetera. My approach was, if I do all the things that I'm supposed to do, and I'm trying to do my best at it, whether that's being a leader or paperwork, whatever it may be, the rest will come. And I just have to be cognizant of those opportunities and where they might take me.
Now,
so that's really what I see a lot of.
Do you find that most people are on a path that they're happy with, or do you think there's a level of dissatisfaction in most people's careers?
It really depends on the individual. Obviously, there's so many different things that influence our career. Some people are happy doing the same thing their entire career. They don't aspire to, be a manager or a traditional leader, and that's great because they understand, where their happiness lies. I think then at different points in our career, we feel differently because maybe we're stagnant or the organization has changed or other aspects of our life have changed, and now we're no longer satisfied and we want something different or something more. So I find it's very individualistic, if you will.
What about generationally? Do you find that the younger generation is more apt to look for something better faster than the older folks?
Absolutely. I think that statistics have shown that, research and surveys have shown that today's younger workforce, they want different things than, say, my parents or your parents. No longer do people stay with the same company, cradle to grave. It just does not happen. There are a few, but I think they're becoming fewer and fewer. So the challenge is, two-sided. One is on the individual to really understand, if I want to continue, what part of that do I own? Because companies own less and less of it seems, in a lot of instances. And from a company standpoint, it's what are you going to do to try to retain that individual, keep them motivated, engaged, and growing so they are always an asset?
So now, do you think that companies, from a culture standpoint, can do things to get the young people to stick around longer, or is this just something that they have to manage through and accept as this is just the way it is nowadays?
No, I absolutely think there are things that companies can do. It's like, I don't know when it came about, last 10, 15 years, you think of the phone company and bundling. I worked in telecom, in HR, so I know these terms. The idea behind that is a stickiness to your customer. The more they have with you, the less likely they are to leave. So the more ingrained an individual is in the culture and the organization, the less likely they are to leave because it's an unknown of what they're going to get somewhere else. If I have a great relationship with my boss and my peers and the work I do is very satisfying, even if I've got just okay or decent benefits, those are things that people want. They make them feel good. So I don't know if I am going to get that somewhere else, because when you go interview for a job, everybody is on their best behavior, right? We've all put on our Sunday clothes and, we're trying to impress. So it all looks good on the outside. You never know until you're on the inside for a little while.
Now, but how much ownership does a leader have when the hire isn't working out? Like if they leave before the company thought they would?
Depends on the situation. If the leader is doing, everything that they should, then I think, you've done what you're supposed to do. So it's the relationship is a two-way street. When it comes into play that somebody hasn't worked out for performance or fit, again, I go back to if the leader is making every effort, in all other cases they're successful, then you can be satisfied at the end of the day that, hey, we're just not a good match and we'll go our separate ways. I think the problem arises when leaders put all the onus on the individual to, self-direct and self-lead, and they don't work at building a relationship. Then yes, as a leader, in my opinion, you have failed. I would assume nothing else except that person is going to eventually leave.
Now, before we wrap, can you share one piece of actionable advice for a new coach that's leading people, maybe that can help them speed up their learning curve?
I would say listen. And we talk a lot about that, but most of us don't really know how to listen. And so you have to be intentional about listening, clearing your head of your own dialogue and that desire to have a response, and focus in on what that person is telling you. Silence is okay.
Great advice. Now, what could we do to help you? Are you looking for more leaders to interview? What do you need more of right now?
I am always looking for people to interview, whether they hold a traditional leadership role or not. I try to put a new interview out on my website at least monthly. 2 recurring columns. One is conversations or leadership conversations. The other one is specifically geared towards women. It's women in leadership. I've been blessed in both instances to be able to have great virtual conversations with a wide range of people. Also open to, somebody's looking for a coach or a mentor, short or long term. Let's talk. Let's see if there's something that I can help you with.
Good stuff. Well, thank you, Anthony Eaton with Leadership and More. If somebody wanted to learn more, the website one more time
is www.leadershipandmore, all one word, .com.
And is spelled out, and I'm sure they can find you on some of the social media channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, things like that. Absolutely. Well, Anthony, thank you so much for sharing your story today. This is Lee Cantor for Stone Payton. We will see you all next time on Coach the Coach Radio.